Hi, everyone. And this is a session to talk about the virtual file description, virtual file system PR that I have assembled at some point, and it's clocking at 20,000 lines of code. So it has been growing slowly while I keep slowly working on it, even if being blocked by AI, being written by AI. Okay. Anyway, the session is about reason why this is important, why it's so big, and why it's and how to review it, approach it in a way that makes some sense. Okay. And I just want to start saying that the current design of the PR is the result of a lot of work of reviews by a lot of people, starting from Stephen and from Joey, that did a lot of provided a lot of insights on how this should be structured. So to be honest, the design is a shared effort at this point. Okay, so a little bit of the problem. Okay, the problem starts. So one of the reasons these exist is because of single executable applications. Okay, so far shipping single executable applications in Node is relatively hard. Okay, I have a before and after to show you the difference, and it requires a convoluted dev pipeline and build toolchain to get stuff done in a good way. Okay. Specifically in SEA, you need to run a single JavaScript file. Okay, so this means that you need to have all the code bundled together, or you can fetch it, but require will not work. Okay, so you need to have specific code to load everything, and it requires a little bit of overhead to some extent. Okay, then there is a problem of mocking the file system in tests. Okay, this has been a requirement from the Node test module to be able to mock file system operations. Okay, this is actually a relatively high pain. Okay, if you have working on some of the stuff specifically, because one of the solutions to the problem is using a temp dir. Okay. However, if you create a temp dir, you and running problems if you want to, test the loader of module loading and things to set up Node modules correctly in that temp dir. Okay, and I don't know. Paolo knows this very well. I don't know if there. Yeah, Paolo knows this very well. All the shenanigans that we have to do in Platformatic to make sure the Node modules is correctly set up in the temp dir.
Fun story.
Okay, it's been a pain for a couple of years of my life. Okay, yeah. And it makes tests very slow as a result because you need to move a lot of files to do those things properly. Okay. The last one is there is no way to create a virtual file, which is something that Yarn uses all the time. So if you use Yarn PNP or analog technologies, you hit something like a virtual file system, okay? But that is very brittle because it's based on monkey patching internals and things like that, that make it very hard to maintain long-term, okay? Specifically, I have I wrote a blog post some time ago. There is also a nice presentation done by Robert Lando. Okay, this is a bad name, and it's one binary to ship them all. It's about a thing called PKG. You probably are familiar with PKG. Okay, it's a new version of PKG. That is going to use SEA, the new SEA support that we added. Then there is, again, issues of compatibility that we broke Yarn at some point, okay? And because we have no specific contract on how to do this, okay? So anyway, this has been a problem for a long time for a lot of different people, okay? So I don't know, at some point I decided to embark on this journey, okay? The journey is a monster PR of 20,000 lines of code at this point, okay? Too big. It's called interpose as node that column VFS. Somebody asked me to expose it at fs/VFS. I don't know. All of these is details, to be honest. Okay, it can go where we want. Okay. The key part there is that you can mount a virtual file system and then it falls through to the real file system if you want. It has an overlay mode. Okay. It covers require, import, all of Node.js, streams, watchers, and node test so far. And the problem of implementing this thing is it has 164 plus, I stopped counting, integration points, okay, throughout the code base. And then I'm going to show you how it's integrated, and it's a lot of one if in every single function that touches the file system, okay? And we have a lot of functions that touches the file system. So how does it work at the basic in a basic way? We have the, you create a VFS instance, okay? You can read and write from the VFS instance independently. It exposes all the FS API, but you can also mount it at a given path. And then after you mount it, you can just use all the normal FS method to read from it, okay? And also require an import would work. A catch is there, okay? This was one of my design choices, and it can be debatable that it's a good design choice or not, okay? It's the virtual file system only works with, like conceptually works only with Unix paths, okay? Because I want the same application to work on both Windows and Mac and with the same code. So it only reasons about Unix paths, okay? So this was one decision, one of the design decisions that I made, okay? And you can mount it at the end of it, okay? Now you could do, you can do overlay if you want. So you could essentially shadow some files, okay? And make sure and make it possible. And which means that you can literally, especially in tests, this is useful so they can test different combination of the same like base code and just alter some modules, okay? It's a relatively interesting testing patterns, I think, okay? And yeah, this is essentially, there is some accessors in mockfs that you can just put the text of the modules that you want and it just works out of the box, okay? Now, the biggest usage for me is in the VFS, okay, capability. But to be honest, it can be in anything, okay? And you just need to turn it on, essentially, and then it would work, okay? And it makes these, it makes this possible that you can just read straight from the /SEA path in the system, okay? Let me show you, just a second. Sorry about this. Exit. Okay, no, this one here. Okay, so this is an SEA configuration of the code that was there before. Okay, that I would currently work. Okay, so when you create a SEA application, you need to use SEA get assets to get the files that are in the bundle. Okay, and it means that this code can only run inside SEA, essentially. Okay, and instead, if we go in the in a VFS Word, okay. Now you can just read from /SEA and it will just automatically work correctly. Which, from my point of view, is a massive win in terms of usability and distribution of the modules. I have a task to fix, which is the support for binary modules, okay, binary add-ons, but it's just a matter of following what Banandino has already been doing for this. Literally, you extract them, write them to disk, and then load normally. Okay, there's no other way to deal with them, so we've got to do with what they are doing anyway. Okay, so the problem is it's just a matter of implementing that, but also even not implementing that is not that big of a problem because In most cases, it's literally just, it's not hard to do it in code. Okay, this is what I'm saying. So hopefully that makes it clear that I can do this nice thing like that from a file that is inside my lib, okay? To be clear, this is working, okay? So I'm just, like this is working code, okay? The PR supports this today, okay? Is it, sorry. Nope, lost all of it, okay? So part of this session is to go through and discuss what the architecture look like and, you know, answer questions from people, okay? The key concept here is we have, this is actually wrong, I updated this, okay. So it's a virtual provider, okay? And a virtual file descriptor. So there is, so we have the base class for all the providers, as well as the concept of virtual file descriptors, which is essentially a number. It's not 10K, it's a bit masked. So it's whatever, but it's not a problem. This has been following what Yarn has been doing, is it just apply a bit mask to them to detect them. And then we have the virtual file descriptor, we have the virtual file handle. So whenever you want to interact with a file, you get a virtual file descriptor, then you can use all the normal FS API to work with it, okay? And we have the concept of the virtual file system, which wraps a provider, which implements a subset of the whole FS API. And then this goes implemented inside the virtual file system, okay? Now, there is an interesting path there that as a provider, you can decide to to override certain functions and not use the standard ones, so that you don't need to allocate a virtual file descriptor if you don't need it to exist, okay? Like, for example, a FS read file. If you're doing a FS read file and you're accessing and you are working on a memory with a memory provider, you actually can just get the full file directly without having to do all the bouncing of the file descriptors, okay? So it's faster. This is what I'm saying. And so we also have a real provider. I ship in 3 providers in Node. One is the memory provider, one is the SCA provider that I just demoed 1 second ago, and then the real provider. Real provider is actually the real file system, okay? Why do we need it?
Unboxed, I guess.
Sorry?
It will be to a certain path, just unboxing that path.
Yes, that is one utility, but the other thing is to support changing the current directory in worker threads. And so I can change the working directory in a worker. Right now, this currently throws, okay? And if you use that, you can change the current directory in a worker thread, and all the API will still work the same, but you don't have to do anything, okay? Hopefully makes sense, okay? It's useful for sandboxing, it's useful for a lot of those things, okay? And it's quite nice. Now, let's go and start looking at the integrations, because I think that is the most, one of the things that a lot of people are asking for to know how this works, okay? The typical way in which this is implemented, okay, is it does something like this. It does a check on this object called VFS state, and it exists, okay? It goes through that, otherwise it follows to the real one, okay? This is pseudocode, essentially, but I wanted to explain the first pattern, okay, of this. How is that FS handler constructed? There is a big function that is in a long file that creates all the things, okay? It's a lot of functions. Yes?
Why not just create an instance? Like make it a class.
I am a person that I don't use classes. that's,
Okay.
that's my answer. I have no answer. Like I have, it's personal preference.
Okay.
Okay, there's no, I don't use class usually. So if you can say use a class there, okay, fine, I can use a class. Okay, there's nothing that is blocking using a class. Okay, it's literally just me being avoiding classes as much as possible.
Okay.
So there is also all the hooks that follows a similar system for plugging into the module loading bits. Now, this is ugly a little bit, it's not nice, okay, because some functions are native bindings. So we need to have some hooks to essentially bypass the native thing, do it in JavaScript, and then do it in C++, in C++, okay? We have some SCA integration, which seems relatively easy to go through. And note that with SCA, the /SCA, if you enable it, mount before mains run, okay? Like, to be clear, what I've also tested is shipping the full, a tree of an application inside a SQLite database, for example, and it works really well, to be honest, okay? And it could also work to shipping inside a zip file, okay? And like, for example, how Java loads dependencies is via zip files, okay, jars, okay? That kind of pattern becomes available to us if somebody wants to experiment in that direction, okay? Now, for people that wants to review it, okay, I put together more or less two paths for it, okay? The first path is going through all of it, starting from what is the data model and all the bits, okay? There is a question, all the examples so far, load the VFS module, add file to the virtual file system, then mount the virtual file system. Yes, and can files be added after mounting? Absolutely, files can be added at any given point in time. It depends on the provider, actually. So if you want to have a provider that is sealed at some point, I think it's, at this point, it's just JavaScript. So it's not, there's nothing, it depends on the provider, okay? So what it does is, so you can have essentially two integration points. One, if you're interested for the full thing, okay? And one, if you're interested in the path that are modifying Node.js, okay? One is the tree. So if you want to know more how all of it works, I recommend to start from the key data model, okay, and the basic providers, okay, and then in understanding the virtual file system, okay. But if you're only interested in the blazed radius of how it impacts Node.js itself, the existing API, okay, I am also pointing out a very skim review. Like, I don't care about the VFS. I care you are not breaking anything that exists already, okay? You know, there is the, which is, I think is it's the biggest concern of people, okay? And in those cases, it's literally on point 3, 4, and 6, okay? Which is how the system is wired into the current APIs, okay? The problem is somebody said, why don't you put it behind the flag? We can put it behind the flag. Even if you put it behind the flag, those code paths will be there anyway, okay? So this is very, you're not avoiding any blast radius by putting it behind the flag, okay? Like we can, it's not a problem, but we are not putting it, we are not making things simpler. We are not reducing the blast radius, okay? The blast radius is the current integrations, okay? It is not, and those you can't put them behind the flag, okay? So it's, if there is a bug in how, in one of those, it's hooked for whatever reason, then it's a problem. Specifically on the module side, that can be a little bit can be controlled. So that's why I'm putting it down on the path 3, 4, and 6, which are essentially where the integration happens. Okay. Specifically, the 6th part is the one that, thank Joey for helping out in all of that, because that was the biggest, was really useful. Okay. So the PR as right now is mostly tests. Okay. And then a little bit of code and a lot of code and some docs. Okay. Like a lot of tests, okay? And to be honest, I think the test code is still not high enough for the feature, okay? So there's more. The feature is essentially code complete to some extent, okay? It requires reviews, it requires testing, but it's not there. It's there. Like I tested it more or less, and for me, it's working, okay? Now, a few people have asked me online, how can you review such a big thing? Okay. This was a question that a few people online asked. Okay. So, and some people call me insane, because when I did develop this, I also developed the tool to review the thing, because it was not, GitHub was not loading the PR anymore. So I ended up creating this thing called Git Human. It's just a CLI that connects to Git local. So you can click and load the file immediately, and it's not slow. So I ended up having to write my own thing to do the review, because otherwise I could not interact with the local agent in a way that makes sense. Okay. So you can see the changes. This supports Git local changes and so on and so forth. You can leave commits, you can leave comments. It has all the GitHub features essentially.
And the comments will post.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it doesn't post to GitHub. You keep them locally in a Markdown file. Then I can feed them to the machine to fix like the problem is, if you need to change this block in copy sync file, for example, you have 100 of those to change. Like it's literally not pretty work if you're not doing it with AI, to be honest. Like it's not like, you see, this is literally the integration, okay? And a lot of these you see it's the same code pattern, okay? To be honest, some of these can be refactored, probably yes, and there are a few bits. I just wanted to show you essentially following the fast path, which is 3, 4, and 6, okay? And the 3 is the injection, okay? Which is this nice file called setup, is 1,000 lines of code alone, okay? I am going to start from the end, because we have the exports at the end, so it's what it is, okay? So at the end, it has a few files. One is register VFS, okay, which is how it starts, okay? And register VFS is this, okay, is this function, okay, which is relatively, it does a lot of things, okay? It takes the VFS instance and set it up for everything. Note that it has a check on for the permission model, essentially. And then it does 2 things. If it's not installed, install all the hooks, and then it set the VFS at the end. And the hooks, okay, is here. It's typically this install module loader overrides. Okay, you see the name is a little bit. Okay, these gets, you see this require, it loads a few files from like this can be. Yeah, you see. Okay. It gets the 2 overrides, one for FS and the loader override for FS and the package overrides. And then these add some functions that goes into the module system to do some of the stuff, okay? To be discussed. Like there is these questions in some of these to be discussed. And like some of these, for example, this get nearest package JSON, okay, because we need to walk through the VFS to get it, okay? And some of these was recently moved to C++, so that's why we need to add this kind of hacks. And so that it does not rely on FS anymore. So that's why we need these special hacks, okay? These special hacks are needed because of those paths are C++ only today. So we need to intercept them. So, this is this file, okay? And then there is this other thing, which is the actual setup of the handlers, okay? Look at all those methods. It's a big function, okay? The comment is proper, okay? So this is literally a reimplementation of all of them, okay? Some of them are not okay, are not good. I tested them. All the code paths are tested. Okay, it's just I expect as all new subsystem to be bugs. Okay, there is literally very little to do at this point. Some of those are built on top of the methods of this. Like there is this utility called VFS, find VFS for path. Okay. Which finds the path, like for example, this is statfs sync, it's just all zeros, okay, to be honest. Again, there's no, people have asked me to fix this and add value here, but so far I haven't, okay? And yes, as I said, there's a lot of methods here that just do a lot of things, okay? Then, one thing to note, I have taken the liberty of implementing the virtual providers based only on promises, so that it's simpler for the end users instead of callbacks, okay? Again, this was a design decision, so we can switch them to callbacks if you prefer to. And yeah, this is long, okay? I'm not going through all of it, I'm just listing. This is the setup, okay? How is this used, okay? Which is the second point, okay? And which is the FS integration. So you remember that there was these calls, this utility. And set, and it's in here. Okay. So here it goes, it gets the VFS state, and you have a function to set VFS state under. Okay. So it's the same object everywhere. And this object is then used inside the libfs module to get, so you have the VFS, okay? And you, with a couple of utilities essentially, and then it's all the ifs, okay? And every single module function in this thing needs to add an if for this. And this is the same for promises, okay? And so on and so forth. Then 6 is the module loader, okay? So internal module helpers. And you see this is the part of the hack, okay, on making this work. And this is, we have the toggable loader FS override, okay? So basically, if we go to the internal binding, only if the wrapper does not exist. And again, it's very literally, like, it's a lot of code that is all identical to some extent, okay? But it's a lot of ifs. And then you can get it, for example, you can see here how it's used. Yeah, so one thing we need to do, we need a clear stat cache when there is, you unmount the VFS, otherwise you will keep loading things that are in the VFS. And here is you get the loader start module that we were doing before instead of the internal FS binding internal module start. What else I can show you? Yeah, again, this is load. Instead of doing read file sync, we go loader read file. Okay. And yeah. Yeah, things like that. I don't know if you, I'm opening to the floor. Okay, I finished my presentation, my speed run. Okay, I presume there are going to be a lot of questions on the topic, so I'm just leaving it for people. I can go and one thing that is interesting, which is different from my presentation, is the file descriptor thing. Okay, we use this FD mask. Okay, here, as you can see, we have the, instead of 10,000, it goes down from here, and we maintain an open map of all the open file descriptors. So essentially it behaves like a leak, like our current file descriptor. So we reproduce including the box. Okay, yeah.
It's great. Okay. So I do have a question for, initially I thought that all the VFS operations would be persisted in memory. But when I saw the implementation of .mount, it implies that the operations might exist on the real file system.
It's in memory in the sense, so it's not persisted, it's virtualized.
Okay, okay.
So it's like Fuse.
Okay,
It's not on a disk.
So yeah, and I saw the issue, virtual file system follow-ups that James created, and the top one is the integration with the permission model.
Yes.
However, initially, when I saw this request for the first time, I thought, okay, this has nothing to do with the permission model because it's all persisted in memory. So technically, no UVFS open will be executed behind the scenes.
Sorry, keep going.
Has that changed? Because otherwise, I don't think the permission model might take a place here unless someone like Moken patch the FS module.
That's exactly the concept. Okay, so somebody like, let's say, can use the permission, like let's say that you are restricting the read, like from a permission model perspective, you are restricting the write on a certain folder.
Yes.
Okay, you can layer a VFS on top of it. Okay, that will enable you to write to that folder, but not write real, but the write in the VFS. Okay. So you're not going to modify the real file system. You're going to modify only the VFS.
But would that change the output of FS operations?
Yes.
Node FS?
Yes.
Okay, so that can be a problem, yes.
Yes, but the way I put it is, if you're using the permission system, this is disabled. If you want it to enable, you need to pass a flag. Okay. So it's a duct tape solution, but it will need some form of backward integration on it to decide what to do with it. Okay. There is a thing called from James that's rewriting. James Sumner's permission model should be present if a permission model feature is going to exist. The file system doesn't. I don't understand the comment, James. Sorry.
That's basically what you said.
Okay, perfect. Okay, fine. Okay, and there is, I don't know, Jacob, I think. Okay.
I think based on what you just said to Raphael, the answer is no. But can you have multiple virtual file systems at the same time?
Yes.
How does FS then know what to do?
Oh, the full machinery can navigate, can find the correct one. There is a slight issue in the handling of overlaps. Okay, it can throw an exception if there is an overlap, and the amount of order mount counts to some extent. But you can have multiple virtual file system mounted together in the same system. There is this function. Let me show you. Is in here and is Okay. Here you have a file name, okay? Then when you have a file name that you want to operate on, it starts searching, it goes to the active list of VFS enabled, then it finds if that VFS can handle that file. If so, it handles that file. So you can have multiple things in order, okay? So first one, first serve.
So what if they all have the same name?
Yeah.
Sorry.
What if name clashes?
So if the name clashes, I probably didn't have a guard of mounting the same thing twice, but probably it should. Like probably you should not mount one into the other. Okay,
That sounds like a massive unnecessary limitation.
It's question marks. Okay, it's a design like that is a design decision. Okay, is so far is pretty liberal. Okay, which means that then user can to some extent shoot themselves in the foot. Okay, if I mount one that is too over another, okay, the nearest one would serve the file. Okay, it works. Okay, but also might not be what it's a design decision essentially. I hope I answered.
I'm thinking a very big use case for this could be testing, and you want to spin up a bunch of concurrent tests. And if you do that, it sounds like FS will just have a stroke.
Yes, I not necessarily think so, but I have not benchmarked it. Like the logic is not that hard, to be honest.
No, but I mean, you would, for instance, have one VFS per thing, and you have all the same test data. You're just doing different things to it. So, say you create.
You need to create mounted to multiple folders. Yes, like it's the same of creating a temporary directory. So.
Yeah, but I was hoping this would kind of get around that.
Yeah, somebody noted to me like that Electron has kind of a similar kind of system for some stuff. Like at some point they said something, but I don't know.
Okay.
There is a question from I think Alexander.
Hi guys. We rely quite heavily on binary add-ons, and to a lesser extent, but a non-zero extent, we rely on being able to execute child processes. It seems like the scope of this is fundamentally, like by design, sort of incomplete, right? Because any either native code or code that's perhaps written in another language and child processed is not going to see the same view of the file system hierarchy as JavaScript code that's what directly or indirectly using the FS.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Do we have any thoughts on like is the scope for this really just going to be limited to SEA use cases? Or do we have any thoughts on like how we might try to address that problem, perhaps using Fuse or something?
I would not put that. Like the fundamental, as I said, the fundamental part of the scope for this was covering for SEA, YARN-like integrations, okay, which is essentially the
module loading.
Module loading, okay, and testing scenarios, okay, which are typically related, for my personal case, to module loading still. Okay, so it's the module loading part is a key feature of this from my point of view. On native add-ons, they won't see the file descriptor, the VFS, but I plan to add some support for them, similar to what Ban and Dino do for this. So basically, you take them, you extract the binary add-on on disk, and then you load. Okay. So, but they won't see the VFS, but you will be able to load them inside the SEA. Did I?
Right. So
Okay.
Yeah. I think I understand. I guess it just feels unfortunate to me that this is branded and I suppose marketed as a VFS when really the scope for it is quite limited. But yeah, I can't think of a better name that covers all the use cases we know about.
If there is a better name, then I am all ears about a better name. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not good. I'm not good at naming. I call a library Undici. So you can. I'm not good at that. I'm not good at that.
And just one other question, just a comment you made earlier. So I think you said something like using a temporary directory was too slow. Was that like kind of like the aggregation of like all platforms there, or because presumably on Linux, like tempfs being just in memory and stuff is quite fast, right? Modulo some syscalls, but are you saying that even that was too slow for the use cases you had?
Let me rephrase. Okay, it's not creating a temp directory was too slow. It's moving 200 megabytes of node modules there that was too slow.
So what even into memory with tempfs?
Yeah, big slow. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess like a fuse-like approach might be better if it was easy to integrate.
Yes,
But,
exactly.
okay.
Yes. Yeah, you see, specifically because you have with node modules folder and stuff, you have a lot of things to move. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I just think like with I don't know, I think there's a few GNOME users here, like with GIO and GVFS behind the GNOME desktop, like they basically create a fuse, a valid path that's implemented by fuse, so that anything that doesn't understand the GVFS or GIO can still access it using POSIX APIs, and it's just routed via fuse behind the scenes. Just kind of I'm interested to see if that might work out here.
I wanted something that would work for SEA and not require I don't know pseudo level permissions to mount things on systems and also Windows. So the SEA case is very strong on my opinion. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I think I understand your point. Yes.
Amazing.
Next.
Now in the queue, I think I
it's me.
have Wes and Brian.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
So as much as I love having nice things, this is a great feature. I'm really concerned about the observability and the security model around this. So some things, for example, that I could picture happening would be a library does this at runtime and you're on a server and now you get a error thrown from some JavaScript file they wrote to a virtual file system, and then you hop on there and you're like, wait, this doesn't exist, right? But the library, like your stack trace is reporting, oh, that this is where the error happened, right? And now you actually have to search through all your, node modules, perhaps, to find which library was I using that used the VFS to then write this file, and which then led to an error, right? So there's like a bunch of, and then security, maybe you have an answer for this, but I'd love to hear it. Adds a whole nother set of issues here, right? Like if you had a malicious library in there, this gives a lot of tools for them to sort of hide what they may be doing, right? Like I could imagine a situation where they write a virtual file system that tries to mimic some known common paths that you might read, and then suddenly now they have, either access or control. It could be a RCE vector, right? In a lot of cases. So have you thought about that stuff, and like what are we thinking about protecting against that?
100% of both. So the first case, not so long ago, I stumbled upon a super popular module on NPM that totally rewrites our module loading system to load PatchScript. So, and that it literally wraps every single module being loaded in a proxy. It completely intercepting all things being loaded and monkey patching some of them. So at this point in time, it's that specific cat is out of the bag.
That's why we had the hooks.
That's why.
Like there's so many of them.
To be clear, I'm not. I understand that this is already existing. Some of this is existing surface area, right? What we're adding here is the ability to make it even harder to find, because specifically you would see stack traces that do not exist. Even if you caught what was going on here and you said, oh, let's try to figure out and debug it, you've got an entire file tree that presumably could be, somewhere buried in source that you can't.
I think you can mitigate this if you have, like, I think what I've seen in other ecosystems, I think maybe Python, I can't remember, but we could perhaps enforce a convention, a requirement, I guess, that the path that's generated, like the virtual path, like instead of it just being /SEA and allowing people to implement that however they want, that it could actually encode if it's a static asset that's part of the SEA bundle, it could literally encode the file name that is the SEA bundle and then the subpath within that. And that could help quite a lot with debuggability when you got your stack traces, because you'd be able to see exactly where the file is being sourced from. Obviously, when it comes to like dynamic in-memory providers and stuff, that's not going to be helpful. But I would assume in production applications where you're worried about getting stack traces that you can't decipher, that forcing any sort of SEA type mount to include in the path the exact details might help with that.
Yeah, I definitely think that's an interesting idea. And also to address James's comment in there, I'm not saying that I think this is a unique problem new to this solution here. It is that we need to be very good about addressing how do you deal with these types of things? What is our recommendation for the ecosystem? And especially, so I don't know much about the Go implementation, to be clear, but in general, these are system, like most people are doing this at their system level, not in the application code, right? And so that usually means that it's just treated a little bit differently, right? Like we're not, for the system level, you're probably having a bit tighter controls. You're not going to just be, again, node modules is the problem here, right? Like the fact that you could do this from some third level deep transitive is the concern, again, for both observability and security in my mind. And we just need to make sure we have very clear documentation and answers on how to approach that as either an application owner or a library author.
Ultimately, there is Joey, maybe you want to say something on this?
As far as I can tell, there's nothing in materials per request that cannot be implemented in the user lab. Whatever, like if there's any security concern, we're already good. They're already possible. That's just like package everything in a nice library. That's less hacky. That's what it is. From a capability point of view, they are already out there, and there are like so many packages that receive tens of millions of downloads weekly, depending on that capability. So
I implemented 100% of this, 99% of this, not 100% of this, in userland. It's just less hacky done in this way. Like this is already totally possible to do.
I agree it's possible. There's a difference between it being a supported core feature and it being possible.
Yeah, but if I have a malicious dependency.
Okay, so let's take the security out of it. I think even just the observability aspect is different.
The observability side is total and real. Okay, the security side, I don't think is.
Yeah, you might be right there.
I don't. Like there is no. This is already possible. Okay, like it might just be inconvenient for the attacker. The hackers might not know how to do it. But the PMP approach and PMP alone proves this is already out there.
Okay, we'll take that out of the conversation. I'm happy to say that we think that was already possible, and so it is not necessary. Observability still, I think, is a pretty important.
Observability is a thing for SEA specifically. What I've done, I've mounted it always as /SEA. Okay, so for the SEA case, that is real. Okay. But for production cases, this is a totally different question mark and conversation to have.
All right. Can you hear me?
No, I think you got to press the button once.
Press the button once. Are we good? Yay. All right. So I see something like a VFS, and I see a bunch of interesting possibilities around stuff like sandboxing.
Yeah.
When I think sandboxing, I also think multi-tenancy.
Yes.
Is there, like, what is the scope of the VFS today? Is it per process, per worker thread, per node environment, per worker thread?
There is right now is not propagated through multiple worker threads, but it's something that I plan to work on in the future. Right. So you could technically spawn it per worker threads, okay? And what I have done, what I've done at Platformatic is exactly that approach. So we use it in the exact that way. They use the ecosystem version that I've done that is super hacky in the exact this way. So
I will say this doesn't change the security model, right? Like Node has no sandbox. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not changing. It's not changing anything. Okay. It make it robust. Okay. It does not. There is a difference between when you're talking about sandbox. Okay. You need to think what is your what you want to defend against. Okay. You can defend against an attacker. Okay. You can defend against code doing something stupid. Okay. And this system can ideally allow you to protect against code doing stupid things. Okay. It can not protect you against an attacker.
That related point, you said it's per worker thread.
Yeah.
I read through all 20,000 lines, but I can't remember. Is it possible to spawn a worker thread with a particular VFS at the start, like the parent imposing a virtual file system on
I stopped adding new features because people complained it was too big. Okay, and that yes, we should be able to do that, but I'm stopping adding things. Otherwise, it becomes 25 lines of code, and I get more tomatoes.
What's like 2,000 more lines? Just do it.
Okay, but is the number one? Like I was debugging, reviewing this last week in Bologna with the maintainer, the current maintainer of PKG, and he basically told me that is the first is number one feature request. So. Hello.
Yeah. So basically, my question was like Brian's question. So for workers, heavy workloads like bundlers, test runners, and so on. So you said that we don't support. We can't coordinate on VFS between workers in the matrix on different workers. So I'd like to know what is your plan or maybe the long-term vision on how to coordinate between all of them.
Well, they will be independent. The inheritance model would be mostly for the SEA. Sorry, I was not clear. The inheritance model is mostly for SEA use case. So you might want the worker threads to inherit and set up the same SEA path. Okay, mounting a specific VFS, I don't think is like it might be possible, but it requires a little bit of thinking. Okay. Because the VFS, the way it's set up is pure JavaScript. So it's code. So if I want a the system is provider based and a user can write his own provider. So I can write the SQLite provider. I might add it to the PR. I didn't add to the PR because I already have the code. But you can have a SQLite provider or a zip provider. Okay. So you can take your node, your node modules and make it a zip file and distribute it as a zip file. Okay. Again, it opens up a few interesting use cases like that. Okay. In that range. That needs to be designed, to be honest. I don't have a good answer.
I think I probably know where you're getting at. It's similar to the module hooks. We kind of dedicate that to command line argument inheritance. There was a separate proposal to inherit preload scripts into workers so that when you have a tree of workers, you said that, well, for this tree of workers, every one of them that gets spawned, they run this script. So there's a separate proposal that I have shelved a bit because we kind of realized, well, maybe the command line argument inheritance is all you need. Maybe except the thing I talked about earlier today about you need a way to filter them out in case to avoid running into infinite recursion, so that you don't like. But yeah, I guess that one is specific to loaders because those spawn workers. But yeah, there are those are kind of orthogonal features that you can implement like inherit either command line argument, then you preload the script, or just have a specific API that just preload script and you let a worker tree inherit them. I was trying to raise my hand regarding the earlier security question and sandboxing. I feel like we should make it non-goal that this has anything to do with security sandbox, because no, it's just not configured. Because like to run untrusted JavaScript code, you need to configure V8 in a certain way, and Node does not configure V8 in that way. So it's better not to risk giving people false promises.
Absolutely. Good. There is Julius is done. Are there any other questions?
I had a comment in there that I might want to say out loud.
Where? Sorry.
Because I'm thinking more about this. So say I'm an app developer and I'm reading from something that I know is on the actual file system that I created. I think there's a case here where we're setting up foot guns, possibly because some other piece of app code could create a VFS not knowing I'm reading from that file path that is at the same file path. And then suddenly now mine is not doing what I'm expecting. So I feel like there might need to be some sort of, maybe it's an option, but I feel like it would have to be on by default to say this read should never use the virtual file system, no matter what the other code in this particular application code does. Because I could see two developers just doing this totally on accident.
Back and forth. This topic, okay, has been a back and forth in the, 100+ comments issues, okay? Back and forth about any allowing or not allowing the overlay mode. So this is a question, and it's to be honest, every choice comes with trade-offs. Okay, you can technically say you can only create a VFS for a new folder. Okay, and that you can mount into that folder the things you want. Okay, and that you cannot mount into an existing thing. But if you want mounting on an existing things allows for really interesting use cases. So it's
but it should not be by default. That's the thing. That's my argument here.
It's not by default. You need to create the thing. It's already behind. It's already behind an option when you install the VFS.
Right. I'm saying, but I authored this code today when this feature is not landed. A year from now, this code is landed, and somebody unknowingly then opts into that behavior. My code that has existed now, pre-existing this feature, is now going to suddenly be doing different behavior than it used to without me changing that code path at all.
That's exactly the point.
And I think that's problematic for some cases because it is unexpected action at a distance, right? Like
I think it's just effectively it's inviting monkey patching at a different level. Like anything that wants to read a file off disk, a resource, a config file, anything, we're like giving them another ability to like effectively monkey patch the read of that, which would be much harder without this. So I think a prefix based approach where it's like completely guaranteed to never overlap seems attractive to me. And I think the idea, Matteo, that you mentioned of only allowing this over non-existing files, that doesn't really cover this, because a lot of tools will try to read a path, and if it fails, it will do something else. So it's still inviting monkey patching if we do it like that.
Jacob?
So I think this is a massive deviation from your design. But did you consider not affecting FS itself? So for instance, you create a virtual file system. All of your read and writes are against that specific instance. So you create an instance, VFS1, read, there's a method on that called read. And then if you want to hit the real deal, you call FS. If you want FS to like have the wool pulled over its eyes, then that sounds like a mock.
It won't work, because if you want to support importing and requiring from the VFS, it was not going to work, because you essentially, let's say that you like at that point you create a VFS instance, okay, which has all the FS method. That's okay. but how do you require and import a file from that, which is not connected to that VFS instance? Okay.
I would expect that to have an identifier. And then when you do your require, you have to specify that identifier.
But then there is the requires and the import from inside it that needs to be automatically resolved from it's very complicated. Okay.
Like for instance, we have file : / v file or VFS : / and you could give it a resolved path. For instance, like on your VFS instance, you could say like resolve path, give it the thing, it spits something out that goes into require gets the thing.
I have a module, multiple modules published that inside their code do fs.read file from a file within the same blob, inside the same module. Okay, they're not like I would need to know. Okay, to make that work, we will need to know that if that module inside the loaded via the VFS is getting a different instance of the FS module, and that's not going to work.
Sorry, why would it get a different instance of the FS?
Because otherwise it's not going to load the file. Let's say that you want to pack the content of an ecosystem module, okay, without touching it, modifying it, without making it VFS aware. Okay, you want to take that thing, put it inside your SCA bundle, and make it work as it is. Inside that file, inside that module, okay, you do an fs.read file for some content. Okay, now the read file that I do inside the module needs to be VFS aware, but I have absolutely no way of contacting the VFS instance unless I am instrumenting the full system. And at that point, that's the current design.
This kind of reminds me of containers and workers, where you can basically like pass your things in.
Okay, sorry. Can you keep going? Sorry.
Oh, where you can pass your things in. So for instance, when you create this, maybe you create your VFS and you pass that into that thing. And then within there, whenever it's calling VFS read and stuff, if you have passed that in, then it will use the thing that you gave it.
Yes, you need to, but you need to change all modules at that point.
Wouldn't they be none the wiser?
Yeah, that's the reason. A key design decision here is I can take any module and make it work inside the VFS without any change.
Wouldn't it do that? Wouldn't this do that, what I just said?
I don't think so. Like, look at this code that I put in here, okay? This runs inside SCA. It does FS read file, okay? Now, this FS is required node FS, is the default thing, okay? How does it know? How does it know? Sorry,
because this is inside of the container, right? So like how VM works.
That's a massive design change that is I am not absolutely not interested in doing. I tried before and I failed. Okay. Into implementing it on top of VM, this kind of thing on top of VM, not possible from my.
No, I'm not saying use VM. I'm saying it sounds like
you will need to do something like node in node, like instantiate a full node environment inside the node environment to do this kind of thing, and that is very leaking memory. I tried that before.
Like a realm or something?
Yes, I have tried that. Not nice. I'm being kicked out.
Okay, sorry.
So we are out of time. If we are interested in continuing discussion, we can continue this after all sessions finish. We have 1 hour schedule buffer at the end. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.